for Pastor Emma one time.
Well, good morning, everybody. I am so excited that me and Ashley get to kick off our Death to Life series. We will be reading out of Jarius today. We're reading about Jarius today out of Luke chapter 8. We're going to land in verse 40 and 42 and all these beautiful things. But how many of you are springtime people? Some springtime people? I'm such a springtime, summertime person that the minute that Christmas is over, literally the minute, when January comes, all my Christmas stuff is gone. It's dead. It's over. I don't want to look at it. Color. Give me all the color. Give me all of the springtime. I don't know what it is about the dark when it gets later at night or darker earlier. I just get sad. Don't know really what that is. There's words for that. But I don't know what it is. But the minute that the sun starts to stay out a little bit longer, I'm a different girl. I'm a different person. You want to hang out after work? Sure. Sign me up. You want to go on a walk? Do you want to do something? Let's go do it. I am all about the springtime. And I think that the beauty about springtime that I love so much is that the dead things are coming back to life. The flowers are blooming again. Things are being done again. We're going outside again. And seasons where we were kind of stuffed away for a while, we now kind of feel like we're coming back to life. In seasons where we have retreated in places of isolation, there's a stillness and a promise that we serve a God who calls color and life from the things that once were dead. And for the next several weeks, as Pastor John mentioned, we are going to be taking a look at a God who brings dead things to life. So we are going to land this morning in Luke chapter 8, verse 40, and they're going to pop it up on the screen for you so you can follow along with me. On the other side of the lake, the crowds welcomed Jesus because they had been waiting for him. And then a man named Jarius, a leader of a local synagogue, came and fell at the feet of Jesus. Pleading with him to come home with him, his only daughter, who was about 12 years old, was dying. And our story kind of jumps a little bit, and there's a woman that receives healing, and it's a beautiful story. And then we land in verse 49 where it takes off, and he says, while he was still speaking to her, a messenger, talking about the woman that Jesus heals, a messenger arrived from the home of Jarius, the leader of the synagogue, and the messenger told him, your daughter is dead. There's no use in troubling the teacher now. But when Jesus heard this, what had happened, he said to Jarius, don't be afraid, just have faith, and she will be healed. I want to pray this morning over our message, and I do believe, as Pastor John mentioned earlier, I do believe that there's space in this room for a miracle, for old things, for dead things to be brought back to life. So will you pray with me this morning? Dear Jesus, I thank you. I thank you that as the ice melts and as the sun peeks out and as you're calling the world, you're calling our place, you're calling the places around us back to life, that you're calling the things in our own life back to life, Lord. Over the places that we have deemed dead, over the places that we've hidden off and closed off to people saying, it's too dirty, it's too gross, it's too dead, it could never come back to life, that you're whispering over these areas, grow, get up and wake up and rise again, Lord. I pray over this morning that as we speak and as we communicate this message, that it would fall in the hearts of people, Lord, and every single person in this room, Father. No matter what we've walked through, no matter what we come in with, Father, may we know that you are still a God that is performing miracles. And they are not out of the grace of that, Father, that you want to meet every single one of these people right here where they are. In your precious and holy name we pray, amen and amen. Well, I'm super excited this morning because I get to tell you a little fun thing that is happening in my own life. Recently, we became parents, not regular parents. I'm not pregnant. I was afraid when I introduced this, everybody was going to be like, but recently became a dog mom. Isn't that right? You're not getting a kid out of me yet. But this is my dog, Bear, and this is, I have a kitchen table now, okay? Please don't. If you ever come to my house, I do have a kitchen table now, and my Christmas bags and my husband's golf clubs. Please don't look at those things. This is the only good picture I have of him, but this is Bear. He is my lab mixed with a golden retriever. To know me is to know that I love dogs. To know me is to know that I love golden retrievers, so much so that if we're out with our family and we see a golden retriever, I might cry. Not just I'm going to cry. It is probably the most basic thing about me, but I I love a golden retriever. Anyways, we don't have to talk about that. But this is Bear. He looks so sweet. He looks so kind. But let me tell you, this dog tests me. Okay? I've had him for a month. Please look at his what I have deemed his wubby. We're not getting into all this today about all the things. But this little creature that he has next to him, the head's gone. The stuffing is out. I loved this thing. I thought, oh my gosh, it's going to be so precious, Joey. Like, he's going to carry this thing around with him when he's a grandpa. It had no chance in our home. It had no chance, no thought. I woke up and Wubby's like dead. All like Squeaker's over there stuffing, and Bear's just like, can I have another one? Can we roll? So to know me is to know I have always wanted to have a dog. I love Bear. He's a train wreck, but I love him. And because I love him so much, I've wanted a dog for so long, I thought this is going to be my dog. Like, he is going to listen to me. This is me and him. Joey, whatever. You can have the next one. You can have a cat. You can have a gerbil. This is my dog. Obviously, it's not turning out that way. Because you look at this sweet creature and you think, okay, like, he rips apart his stuffed animals. Like, what else could she? When we adopted him, we didn't actually ever really get to hang out with him. We were on a waiting list for a hot minute, and one Tuesday morning, they just called us and said, hey, Bear's ready, can you pick him up? And we were like, oh, yay, it's a boy. And we went and picked him up. And they handed Joey this like really janky leash. And they're like, here you go. No papers, no nothing. I think it's illegal maybe. But the only thing that they told me, and they told Joey, was, be careful because he's a runner, okay? Be careful because he's a runner. Joey gets home and he's like, I don't really know. Like, he seems fine. Like, he just wants to lick. Like, I don't really know if he's gonna run away or anything. And we just started renting a house, and it's got a beautiful backyard with a fence. So we thought, okay, like, we'll just let him out in the backyard when he has to go to the bathroom. Well, one day, I let Bear out to go to the bathroom, and I'm working from home, and I'm looking out my window, I'm basking in the light. I'm having a moment. And I see this flash of black. Homeboy has jumped over the fence. And I'm like, okay, Mr. Man. And I'm like yelling for it. I'm yelling for him. And Joey has to go and get him. And I'm crying because I'm like, he didn't come to me. He didn't come. Like, whatever. Okay, cool. Y'all, this ain't the only time this has happened. One time, Debbie was coming over to my house, and Debbie, I gave her the wrong directions, okay? I gave her the wrong directions to my house, and she's driving around Charlotte trying to find my house, and so I think, okay, like, I'll just FaceTime you. I'll show you where my house is at, you'll figure it out. So I'm not a mom. I don't know these things. I walk outside, and the screen door's right there, and he's just chilling inside. I don't think anything of it. I'm FaceTiming Debbie, like, where we're at, and she's yelling at me on the phone because I gave her the wrong address, whatever. Flash of black, there he goes, runs down the street. I'm in my slippers, okay? I'm running down the street in my bougie neighborhood. I rent, but they're all bougie, and, they're yelling at me. He should be on a leash. This was not my intention, Martha. Not really what I wanted to do this morning. I'm in my slippers, okay? Okay, cool. I thought that was it. I thought, okay, we can't let him in the backyard. We can't do this thing. I'm a master. Like, me and you, Bear, we're locked in. You're not going anywhere. Well, this past Wednesday morning, it was a beautiful morning. It was a beautiful, almost spring morning, right? I'm on my way to school. I like my outfit. It's going good. My kids, they've turned in their homework. Like, it's going to be a good day, right? I'm saying goodbye to Joey. Our house is pretty small, so our couch is right here next to our front door. So couch, front door, okay? Joey's like watching ESPN or whatever, so he was a little distracted. And I'm like, you need to grab the dog because, runner on the loose. He's like, yeah, whatever, I got him. I'm making Joey sound really bad in this, but I just don't want to blame this on myself. I walk out, and I think, I love that dog so much. Legitimately, I'm thinking, I just love him so much. One foot is out of the door, one foot is in the door, and he comes like between me and runs. Like I've never seen before. Like, he's a runner, he's a track star, he's all the way down for 5 blocks. And I'm watching him just fully like off. I'm like, I've tried to run with him before. He's the worst. He's selfish. And so I'm just like, okay, cool, this is how it's gonna go. And in a moment, I'm panicked because the last time he ran away, I was in my backyard in my rain boots crying. Like, I didn't know what to do. And now I'm just like, he's not going to come to my name, like, for me to call him. And so in an instant, I'm standing like this, and all I can mutter is Joey. Because there's two things that I know. That Joey's voice is the only voice that can call Bear back to me. And it's the only thing that can calm my anxieties to know that my dog's going to be okay and he's not going to die. But there's also one thing that Bear knows, and it's the voice of his father. This morning, we're going to talk about how, in our Death to Life series in this first week, if you're taking notes with us, our first point this morning is when we encounter dead places in our life, the Lord commands us to be unafraid. Now, we talked about Jarius a little bit, and he's our main guy. He's our main character. He's having a main character moment in this story. Because what Jarius does is counterculture to the moment that he's in. To know Jarius is to know he's a synagogue leader, and what that can easily translate to is that he's a pastor. And he's the pastor of his town. So not only is he the youth pastor, not only is he the congregation pastor, he's the one baptizing babies, he's the one performing funerals, like he's doing all the things. So everybody, whenever they have a problem, whenever they need a pastor, whenever they need a friend, whenever they need a father, they're going to Jarius. That is who the community looks to. And he, at this moment, within the context of synagogue leaders, they didn't really know how they felt about Jesus. Because Jesus was kind of messing stuff up, flipping some tables, working on the Sabbath, probably not brushing his teeth, I don't really know, but they had some opinions about Jesus. So Jarius, at this moment, what he's doing, begging at the feet of Jesus, is completely counterculture to what has happened up until this point. But when Jarius does go to the feet of Jesus, what he does is he demonstrates two things when he goes to his feet. Number one is that the only voice that could heal his daughter was the voice of Jesus. And number two is that the only thing that could calm his anxieties in him would also be hearing the voice of Jesus calling back his daughter. The only thing that can calm his anxieties. I think for a lot of us, when we think about the dead things in our life, that they bring fear alongside of them. And not just fear of the dead thing, but fear of what other people might say when they find out about this dead thing in our life. What others might say, what they might do, what they might think about it, how it might create different rifts in social settings when they find out this thing that's dead in your life because you are calling it out. Oftentimes, it's even the thing that keeps us from asking for help and creates us to deeper plunge into this fear, into this anxiety with this dead thing, because we don't want to expose it. We don't want people to know, well, I'm dirty. What will they do when they find out about this thing in my life? What will they do when they find out that my marriage is on the rocks? What will they do when they find out that my kid's not following the Lord anymore? What will they do when they find out that I lost my job, or I did this thing, or I said this thing? What will they do? How will they respond? How will they look at me? They can't know. They can't know. And that mentality pushes us back, and it pushes us back into the darkness where we say, I can handle it. I'm strong enough. I got this. And I don't know about you, but the more times that I've told myself that I've got this, the deeper into the darkness I have gone. The deeper into being alone I have gone, the deeper the depression sets in, the deeper the anxieties step in, the deeper and darker and scarier it gets. And it also creates me feeling more alone than anything. More alone than putting it out there would have ever made it be. I don't ever want to assume anything about Scripture. I just want to get that straight. And I don't want to assume anything about Jarius at all. But I could only think, and I could only imagine, that it must have been tough for him to go to the feet of Jesus, to this man that his peers and his colleagues have looked up and down and rolls their eyes at, and to the people in his community that are looking at him for trust and guidance, the people that they've also raised their eyebrows at him and lay at his feet the dead thing in his life. I could only imagine what that felt like of what if they see me? I'm the person that these people depend on. I'm supposed to be the strong one. I'm supposed to be the one that has it all together. I'm supposed to be the holy one. I'm the person that they go to. What are they going to do? Are they going to think that I can't carry their thing anymore? Are they going to think that I can't do this anymore? What are they going to think about me? There have been times in my own life when I have allowed the fear of what others will say about my dead thing keep me from coming to the altar. They have kept me from allowing somebody to walk with me, and I was so afraid of other people's voices that it kept me from seeing that my dead things be brought to life. There have been times and places in my life where I was so afraid of what somebody might say about that thing in my life that I kept it to myself, and I said, I got it. I can handle it. I got this. Can I just tell you that it only made the stench of death fester more in me? That it only made that thing stronger in my life. The fact that I had to hide this dead thing. Have you ever tried to carry dead weight around? Something dead? It's heavy. It takes everything out of us when we have to carry our dead things and when we try to hide our dead things. I remember being 18 years old and just recently saved, maybe not even, yes, but sitting there at a youth group and thinking, okay, I'm saved, and they know a little bit about me, but they don't know this. You know, I'm saved and I'm an intern, but what if I go up to the altar and Pastor John sees what I did last summer? Well, I'm saved and this happens, but what if they find out about my family? I'm saved and I love the Lord, but what if they find out about this thing? I'm saved and I love the Lord, but what if they find out about this thing and they don't want me doing X, Y, and Z anymore? What if this is all taken from me? No, it's better if I just hide it. And there was the wrestling back and forth. And what if they see me? And what if my healing doesn't come? And what if my breakthrough doesn't happen? And what if I lay all this out and I look like a fool and it doesn't happen? And the relationship isn't restored and then my family's not healed and I look like a fool? And what if I give it over to the Lord and it turns out that he isn't who he says he is? But the beautiful thing is that the moment that Jarius realized that on his own power he could not resurrect his daughter was the moment that Jesus was able to step in. And by doing so, it illustrates to us that we have to begin to trust who Jesus says he is. We have to. Jarius had not only admitted to the crowd that he himself could not perform a makeshift resurrection and makeshift healing on his own, but also had to admit that he trusted Jesus, not just to himself, not just to his peers, but to his community, to everybody around, and to Jesus himself, that he believed that Jesus was who he said he was. I have to tell you this morning, but that God has to do what he says he will do, otherwise he is not God. He has to keep his promises. He has to perform the miracles, otherwise he is not God. That is what makes him God. And the thing is, we don't have to be afraid at admitting that there are dead things in our life. We don't have to be afraid. We don't have to carry that dead weight around any longer. But however, we do have to be afraid of hiding and tricking ourselves into thinking that we can resurrect it on our own. Can I tell you how many times I tried to perform my own makeshift resurrections on my failures? My own makeshift resurrections on the relationships failed and on the sins that I committed and all of the things, and I tried to heal it on my own. You, on your own power, cannot bring dead things back to life. You just can't. But the thing is, and the beautiful thing is, that we do not have to be afraid of the dead things in our life. And hear what I'm saying. It's not that death doesn't exist. Death exists. It's that it doesn't have the final say. He does. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 55 says, "Where, O death, is your victory? Where, O death, is your sting?" It's not that death doesn't exist. It's that Jesus' voice has the power over it. It's not that death doesn't exist. It's that he's the only thing that can bring life back. So my question to you this morning is, what's your dead thing? What's that thing? What's the dead thing? And I want you to get extremely honest with yourself. To look into the closets, to look in the places, to look at those things of the what if. What if they see me? What I'm supposed to be this person. I have this look. They're supposed to, but what if? What's your dead thing? And this morning, may we boldly lay these things down at the feet of Jesus, trusting that he is who he says he is, because he has to. Because he absolutely has to. Now I'm super excited because, as Pastor John mentioned, I get to share the stage this morning with one of my favorite preachers, one of my favorite people, Pastor Ashley, and she is going to continue walking us through our series on Death to Life.
Do you guys need a breath for just a minute before we keep going deeper? The thing that's beautiful about death to life is the life at the end, but sometimes it's a little uncomfortable to talk about the reality of the dead things in our life. And we're just getting started, so get excited. We're going to keep going in our story with Jesus and Jarius, and we're picking up in verse 51. It says, "When they arrived at the house, Jesus wouldn't let anyone go in with him except Peter, John, James, and the girl's father and mother. The house was filled with people weeping and wailing, but he said, "Stop the weeping. She isn't dead. She's only asleep." But the crowd laughed at him because they all knew she had died. Now, I know we've lived through a couple years without crowds, but when I think about crowds, I think about The Price is Right. How many of you have ever watched The Price is Right? Yeah, I'm so glad. I feel like I'm always admitting things with my parents in the second row, but I used to pretend that I was sick and loved to stay home from school to watch The Price is Right at 11 o'clock on CBS. And just really, really love the show. So if you're not familiar with it, basically people get picked out of an audience where they're all like going crazy and they've got t-shirts with fun sayings on them trying to get picked to come up and guess the prices of things. And if you guess the closest price to something, and you play all these games, but basically if you guess the price, you win the item. And there's this thing at the end called the Showcase Showdown where people are trying to figure out, okay, good, I'm glad some people are familiar with this. I'm just gonna go all in on my nerd. They're trying to guess the price. And here's the thing, when they're doing it, they're presented with all this stuff, and then they're asked, how much do you think this is? And you know what the first thing they do is? They turn around and they look at the crowd and everyone starts screaming out what they think it is. And somewhere in that crowd, they have their people, right? You know, the ones wearing the same matching shirt as them who are trying to give them good advice. But then they also have people who, they're either the crowd for someone else who's playing against them, or they're hoping they'll lose so that they can get picked to go. And people are screaming out so much stuff that it's often that they get flustered and don't go with their gut, pick the wrong thing because they listened to the crowd or they couldn't hear their people in the crowd, and then they lose the Showcase Showdown. And you can watch them on YouTube, and it's a really fun thing to do. And it's a funny story, but there's so much truth in that when you encounter dead places in your life, sometimes you have to shut out the crowd. There are 3 things that the crowd does in this particular story. The first one is that the crowd crushes. In a part of the story where Jesus is moving to Jairus' house, it actually says as he was on his way, the crowds almost crushed him. Now that's easy to picture in a physical way, but I think we still get crushed by the crowds. We might not be physically surrounded by people, but we get so lost in what everyone else is thinking and what everyone else is doing that we lose track of our own vision, of what God's calling us to be, of that identity that is uniquely ours, because we're so caught up that we just become one of the crowd that can't even move in its own direction. We have to shut out the crowd. The other thing that the crowd does is the crowd mocks. These people who had just been weeping and wailing, did you notice how quickly they could go from weeping and wailing to laughing at Jesus when he said, "She's not dead, she's just asleep"? Now, again, like Emma said, we don't want to assume, but at the same time, I kind of think if you're in genuine mourning and you hear from this person who's been performing miracles all over the place, that this person that you're weeping and crying over because they're dead is only asleep, if that were me, I would get pretty excited. But what do? They laugh at him. I took a leadership seminar a few years ago when I was working for a cross-cultural organization with people from all over the place, and there were some Australians in my group, and they taught me this kind of leadership principle that a lot of people in Australia follow and other places. I don't want to pick on the Aussies, but it's called the tall poppy syndrome. Have any of you guys ever heard of that before? It's this idea that if everyone is like a poppy, if a poppy gets too tall, if that poppy sticks out from the crowd too much, it's the crowd's job to cut it down, because you're not supposed to stick out. Everyone's supposed to be about the same. And once I heard that, it cleared up a lot of stuff about trying to lead Australians. But I started noticing it, because I notice it in myself sometimes, that if I'm not right with the Lord, if I'm not confident in who he made me, and I see someone else who seems to be stepping out, who seems to be seeing something dead in their life come to life, I don't like that. I want them to be back down where I am so I can feel okay with that. And maybe it's just me, but I know that it's not just me. A lot of us are like that, and the crowd is like that. And if we're not careful, if we're listening to the voices in the crowd, that moment that we begin to have hope that this thing isn't dead, it's just asleep, and God can raise it to life, that's the moment the crowd's going to start mocking and try to cut our tall poppy down to size. But we have to shut out the crowd. The third thing that we see about the crowd is that the crowd is committed to death. Now, I told you guys that I would do this. I don't know if you noticed we have some men in suits today. You guys look sharp, you look good, but I definitely thought that there was a funeral after the service when the first few of you guys walked in, which Pastor John did too, it sounds like, so that's cool. And that's something that culturally we do when there's a funeral, right? We dress nicer out of respect and honor. Well, culturally, in this time, one of the things that they would do is they would actually hire professional mourners to come to places where people had died, not just funeral services, but kind of in the homes and leading up to the funeral. And I know that might sound kind of weird to us, but it was really done out of respect. And the person who ran the household would hire these mourners to come and basically show that this person who died was so loved that look how many people are out here crying and wailing and making noise. But the thing about this is we know the head of this household was Jarius, right? And we also know from what Emma taught us that Jarius wasn't home when his daughter died. He had to be told by the servants that his daughter had died. So he hadn't hired any mourners. A lot of scholars who are way smarter than me basically say that it was likely that these were people who knew he was a synagogue leader, knew he had money, who had shown up to weep and wail for his daughter, who they may or may not have known, because they hoped that he would hire them and pay them for doing that later. Now, if that's not committed to death, I don't know what is. And I think that we want to be nice, right? We want to love people because we love Jesus and he loves people. And so we don't want to go as far as to say that the crowd is committed to our death. But Jesus, he kind of did. He told his disciples, the world would love you as one of its own if you belong to it. But you're no longer part of the world. I chose you to come out of the world, so it hates you. We live in a world that is committed to our death, and we have to shut out the crowd. Does that mean that every person is out to get you? Absolutely not. It doesn't mean that. So don't be worried about that. Because we see that Jesus brings a couple people in the room with him, right? He doesn't go in by himself. He brings 3 of his trusted disciples, people who know him, people who love him, who've done life with him. And then he brings the girl's mother and father, people who know her, people who love her. And it's when they're in the room, when they've shut out the crowd, that's where the miracle happens. So today, I think there might be voices in the crowd that you need to shut out. There might be voices that say that your marriage is dead. Just give up on it. Shut the door. There might be voices that say that your hope for having a family is over. It's dead. Shut the door. There might be voices that say that the possibility that you're ever going to feel anything other than numbness or pain or shame is dead. Shut the door. There might be voices that say that you're never going to be able to reconcile with that person. The hope of that is dead. Shut the door. There might be voices that say that your opportunity to make a difference in this world is dead. Shut the door. Why are we wasting a single second listening to what the crowd says when we have a God who is speaking over us, who raises dead things to life? Shut the door. Just don't entertain it any longer. Because after Jesus shuts the door and gets them away from the crowd, that's where the miracle happens. When they get into the room, Jesus took her by the hand and he said in a loud voice, louder than whatever was going on outside the door, "My child, get up." I want to stop before we go even further because he took her by the hand. Have you guys ever been around a dead body? Okay, I'm seeing some silence, which is probably good. It would be weird, right, to just walk up to a corpse, someone you'd never met, and take her by the hand. But it was more than weird. You see, the Old Testament sets up all of these laws in the book of Leviticus that is kind of hard to read sometimes. And there's a whole section of them called purity laws. And basically, these are laws that say that if you do this thing or that thing, then you're considered unclean. Usually for a period of time, not forever. And then you need to do A, B, C, and D at just the right time with the right priest doing the right kind of sacrifice or offering, and then you can be clean again. But if you're in a place where you are unclean, you're not fit for worship, which means that you're not fit to come into the presence of God. Now, one of these laws in the book of Numbers, chapter 19, it says, all those who touch a dead human body will be ceremonially unclean for 7 days. Unfit for worship, unfit to come into the presence of God. But what did Jesus do? He took her by the hand. You might think that you're unclean. You might think that, like Emma talked about, if they just knew that thing, if they knew the way that I think, if they knew what I had done, if they knew what I said to my kids on the way here, if they knew, then I wouldn't be fit to walk in this room. And I certainly wouldn't be fit to be in the presence of a holy God. But I'm here to tell you that God already knows. And he's not afraid to get his hands dirty. He reaches out and takes her hand. And what does he do when he takes her hand? He tells her, my child, get up. My child, get up. When you encounter dead places in your life, get up. So at that moment, her life returned and she immediately stood up. And then Jesus told them to give her something to eat because Jesus is spiritual, but he's also practical. And her parents were overwhelmed. But my question is, what if she had laid there? What if Jesus had taken her by the hand and said, my child, get up? But she was convinced, no, I just died. I've been sick. I'm just going to lay here. You may not know what you're talking about. Or what if her parents who were in the room, who had had this faith to go out and find Jesus and bring him to their home, what if they had been like, Jesus, you don't know what you're talking about. Why are you telling her to get up? She's dead. Why do we live that way? How many of us have been told to get up and instead we're saying, God, you don't know. You don't understand. You don't know. I'm already dead. It's already lost. It's already done. So I'm just going to lay here. God's telling you to get up. Get up. It's simple as that. You don't have to do the work of resurrecting yourself, but you have to respond. And so that's what we're going to spend some time doing this morning, is responding. And the thing is, we have to be physical about the way that we respond, because sometimes if you don't do some sort of physical action, it's a nice message and you're going to walk out the door and you're going to be just the same as the way that you walked in here. But what we have been praying for is that none of you would be the same when you walk out today, because what was dead can be made alive. And just like he's a God of miracles in the Bible, he's a God of miracles right now. So we're going to take some time to worship, and I'm going to challenge every single person in this room to get up. And we're going to open the altars. So you can get up and stand up in your seat, and if that's where you are and that's your physical response, that's fine. But I want to challenge you that if there's a dead place in your life that you need to stop being afraid of, that you need to shut the crowd out about, and that you just need to get up and let be resurrected, come to the altar. Our pastoral team's going to be up here, and we would love to pray with you. But now it's time to get up.